So fast.
You're so fast, all these years.
So we're gonna call the meeting to order for our public hearing. And the first item on our agenda is a staff presentation from the Eastern District Planning Commission. And that's with regard to a second reading to enter into a development agreement for a maximum of 80 units on lot 5B, PID number 50155-779 Memorial Drive, Town of Port Hawkesbury, Inverness County. So we're handing things over to Eastern District Planning first.
Yes,
Over to you,
Michaela.
Michaela. Thanks for coming, Michaela.
Thanks for having me. So just a bit of background, this application was received in March 2024. We received the application from Jeremy Carroll on behalf of DC Developments Limited, seeking a development agreement with the town of Port Hawkesbury to allow for about a maximum of 80 units to be constructed in 2 phases on lot 5B PID 50155-779. The property was previously owned by Smith and Fraser Mobile Homes Limited. I believe you guys closed the purchase agreement on May 31st. So just a bit of further background, there was a previous development agreement with Smith and Fraser Mobile Homes Limited when they purchased the property in April 2008, and they entered into a development agreement with the town that same year. The property was subject to a development agreement that permitted the construction of 86 mobile home units, and the existing agreement was discharged, I believe, at the last council meeting, which would be required before approving and registering this new development agreement. So this is just a picture of the lot. It gives you some information. The lot is about 20.54 acres in size. It's quite sizable. So the property is a mix of zoning. It's under the residential designation, and it is currently split zone between residential 2 unit at the front of the property and residential rural R5 zoning at the back. So the site is located off of Memorial Drive, and it's behind the sewage treatment plant and that dog place, which you all know is a doggy daycare. So just going over again, it's dual zoned. Those uses, that density is not permitted as of right, which is why we are undergoing a development agreement, which is enabled under Part 5.1A of the Town of Port Hawkesbury Land Use Bylaw and Policy L-1.4.2 of the Town of Port Hawkesbury Municipal Planning Strategy, which there's a quote, multiple unit dwellings over 6 within the residential designation according to Policy L-1.4.2. So this is just some pictures of the site. There you can see the doggy daycare. They bark a lot when I walked up there. And that is the current appearance of the road Memorial Drive, which is owned and maintained by the town. So, oops, that was interesting. So this is just an image kind of showing the view of the property, the lay of the land. You can't see it, but the sewage treatment plant is right behind those trees, and you can kind of see the doggy daycare building that's off to the right. So frontage on Memorial Drive, it's a road that's owned and maintained by the town. The lot was originally intended to become a mobile home park, as I previously stated, and there was some preparation work that was made by Smith and Fraser Mobile Homes Limited, and that some of that infrastructure is still in place today, though it would be about 16 years old or less. So this is just an example of some of that previous infrastructure. There are water and sewer mains, there's a road entrance, there's culverts and ditching. So you can see there's a bit of road construction here going through the property. We've got some culverts and ditching that's already existing on the property. These are some of the examples of other infrastructure currently there: fire hydrants, some fencing, some trees that have been planted, a manhole cover, things like that. And just in terms of enabling policies, council shall have regard to, water, sewer, the capabilities, financial capabilities. So in that regard, we sent off some referrals, requests for comments to the departments, the appropriate departments. The town of Port Hawkesbury, on behalf of the Municipal Department of Public Works, stated that the proposed development is not premature or inappropriate by reason of the adequacy of the road network adjacent to or leading to the project, the adequacy of sewer and water services to support the proposed development, and the municipal CAO, on behalf of the Municipal Finance Department, confirmed that the proposed development would not be premature or inappropriate by the financial capability of the town to absorb any cost relating to the development. And finally, the Regional Executive Director for Strait Regional Center for Education stated in correspondence dated November 23rd, 2023, that any increase in enrollment is always welcome. So this is just some of the quick summary of the development agreement. We're permitting the use of residential dwellings on the property with a total maximum of 80 units. We are asking that this development be commenced within 2 years and completed within 10 years. Otherwise, council has the ability to discharge the agreement. This is just an example of the site plan. Some of these roads are already kind of semi-constructed, as you can see in some of the pictures, based on existing infrastructure. And then we have this as the, oops. Oh goodness. Okay. There we go. And this is the example of the phasing plan. So we talked about this being developed in 2 phases. It'd be 40 units in the first phase along that semi-constructed road, and then in the second phase, further developing of the site and adding those additional 40 units. So the SPIs are the statements of provincial interest, in which we have to consider how well developments in planning matters align with the statements of provincial interest. In terms of drinking water, there's no impact on the provision of drinking water. This property is not located in a well field or an area covered by a source water protection plan. This area is not in an identified flood risk area. It's not considered agricultural land or impacting agricultural lands in any way. In terms of infrastructure, it does make use of existing infrastructure that is already in place. And in terms of housing, it doesn't take away any housing, and it does provide a significant number of units. So in staff's view, the proposed development is reasonably consistent with the statements of provincial interest. Building types, we're looking at 2 different building types for the development. They're both 4-unit buildings. One is a quadplex, which is more of a square-shaped layout in this case. And then the other is 4-unit studio row houses or townhouses. So just unit after unit in a line. And these are just some example pictures of some of those buildings that have already been constructed for this project. And just a quick saying, the public hearing in accordance with the MGA was advertised in the Reporter May 29th and June 5th. No formal submissions were received by the Eastern District Planning Commission in favor or against the proposal. And finally, it is the opinion of planning staff that the proposed development for a maximum of 80 units meets the intent of the town of Port Hawkesbury Municipal Planning Strategy, according to the requirements set out in the document. And this is a possible council motion. Any questions?
Thanks, Michaela. We'll open up the floor if there's any questions from council at this point. Okay, so hearing no questions, post-gallery presentation, I will ask, I have to ask 3 times and make 3 calls for any opposing presentations. Second call for any opposing presentations. And a final call for any opposing presentations. Okay, hearing no opposing presentations, I would call for any presentations in favor. I have to make that call another 2 times. For a second time, a call for presentations in favor. And the third call for presentations in favor. And I'll ask at this time if there were any written submissions to the town.
There were no written submissions received by the town.
Okay, so that completes that item, Terry, I believe.
So, yes, and so the recommended, as a result of the public hearing, the recommended motion will go forward to public meeting for consideration
Yeah, directly after this.
directly after this meeting.
So we'll move on to our next staff presentation, also from Eastern District Planning Commission. And Michaela, are you doing this one as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a second reading to amend the Town of Port Hawkesbury Municipal Planning Strategy and Land Use Bylaw to allow a building supply sales business, retail sales, restaurants, clinics, warehouses, and outdoor storage in a commercial district C4 zone, and to relax architectural requirements for accessory buildings and amend signage provisions. Over to you.
Thank you. So once again, a bit of background about this file. The original request was made by Jim Mustard on behalf of 678734 NB Inc. in May 2023 to allow retail sales, including building supply, in the commercial restricted C4 zone. However, things have changed a bit, and the current request is coming from Daniel McDonald of McDonald Group, and that request was made in March 2024 to allow retail sales, including building supply, restaurants, clinics, warehouses, outdoor storage, as well as making amendments related to accessory buildings, signage, and some architectural guidelines. Good. So this is just a context map of the property. As you can see in the photo, this is the old call center, which the property borders Richmond County, a bit of the town limits. To the rear is more of an industrial area. And then right across is Cardell Estates, which is a mobile home park, as indicated by the mobile home park zone. So just a bit of history about the property. In 2001, the building was constructed, and in 2011, the call center was shut down. Renovation permits were issued for Department of Natural Defense, which is an ongoing use. In 2014, there was a land use bylaw amendment made to allow for medical research and production facilities. And then in 2019, there was a land use bylaw amendment again to allow cannabis production and processing. Renovation permits were issued for that use. However, the work was never completed, which brings us to our present application for additional uses. So in terms of analysis in regards to the planning strategy, the strategy acknowledges that there is a historic trend of call centers, and it established the commercial restricted zone, C4 zone, kind of in response to that. The zone permits a range of uses, but excludes those which would require outdoor storage and display, and have significant signage or more industrial type uses. So just to kind of buffer that residential zone that's across from there. So However, the requested uses can be compatible as long as we make provisions that would mitigate the impacts on the surrounding neighborhoods and the open space zone. Oops. Oh my goodness. So this is just a step-by-step. We're going through the amendments that have actually been made. We are adding the commercial restricted zone as one of the zones permitted to have outdoor storage and display, just making that clear, both in the preamble and the policy. And we're also reflecting this in the land use bylaw amendments, where we are permitting the commercial restricted zone to have that outdoor storage and display with a bit of restriction. So this is the proposed signage, which would be similar in terms of visibility to the TD Bank sign, which is currently permitted. And they're also looking for 2 larger ground signs in addition to the fascia sign. So we've also made changes to allow for that in the land use bylaw. Just, specifying that they'll be allowed 2 signs and that the 2 ground signs must meet certain requirements, restrictions for size. In terms of accessory building provisions, there are currently architectural guidelines for accessory buildings to look similar to the main building of the property. However, we found that this does not really work for industrial uses, commercial uses. A lot of the storage buildings do not necessarily look like the main building and don't have to. So we're just making that change to be more flexible. We're allowing this permission, this relaxation in the commercial highway zone, the commercial restricted zone, and the mixed use zone, as well as the industrial extractive zone. Oops. So once again, we're just going to go over the statements of provincial interest very quickly. This is an existing building, so there's no impact on drinking water. The property is not in an identified flood risk area. It is not agricultural lands or identified as impacting agricultural lands. And it is an efficient use of municipal infrastructure since the infrastructure is already there for that building. And housing is not impacted as a result of this proposal. So to conclude, the amendments support the adaptive reuse of an existing building that is very large, which would help reinvigorate the vacant site, or mostly vacant. And this would add value for the community and residents as well as for the wider area. So we are, of course, recommending the approval of the proposed amendments as outlined in Appendix A of the staff report dated April 25th, 2024. So similar to the last file, just a word that the public hearing was advertised in the Reporter on May 29th and June 5th in accordance with the MGA, and no formal submissions were received by district planning. Oops. Oh my goodness.
It's okay.
I'm just going to move this.
So I'll ask at this time if there are any questions of council with regard to this particular reading.
Just a comment, Your Worship.
Go ahead.
I know how you like history, a little history lesson at every council meeting, so you're gonna get one
I
today.
don't even know how that rumor started.
I remember back when McDonald's came to Port Hawkesbury, and there was a big, for the lack of a better word, hullabaloo over the sign. I see they're looking for a signage here. And they wanted a high sign versus a low sign, And CBC television was here, and ATV, and it was just a clear whatever down at the old courtroom and the old CRDA residence. I just hope that we don't have that issue this time, and it's going more smooth with this council. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Without further ado, I'll make my first call for opposing presentations. A second call for opposing presentations. And a third call for opposing presentations. Hearing none, I will make the first call for presentations in favor. And a second call for presentations in favor. And a third and final call for presentations in favor. And hearing none, we will ask if we've received any written submissions.
Madam Chair, there were no written submissions received.
Okay, thank you very much. We will move on to agenda item 10, which is a staff presentation for the second reading of a bylaw entitled Alternative Voting Bylaw. Over to you, Terry.
Madam Chair, can I just make a comment? If you see the process started in March of 2024, typically when developers are asked how long this process takes, it's indicated it's about 6 months. So just very much appreciate the work of Eastern District Planning on moving this forward in a timely manner. And yeah, so it's very good. It's very exciting. Two very exciting developments that have been ongoing for work on a little while, and it's a good night to be sitting at this table.
Thank you, Terry. Thank goodness we have. Plus the history. So over to you, Terry, whenever you're ready.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. So just quickly, with respect to the alternative voting bylaw, on May 7th, public meeting of council passed a motion to adopt a telephone/electronic voting system augmented to reflect the traditional system without paper. We had a first reading at a special meeting on May 21st. Council approved first reading of the alternative voting bylaw. So tonight is the public hearing for the actual bylaw. The process has been approved. The bylaw has been reviewed. And I'll just go through briefly some points on the bylaw. Short title of is the bylaw shall be known as the Town of Port Hawkesbury Alternative Voting Bylaw and may be cited as the alternative voting bylaw. So it is a quite a long and comprehensive bylaw. It was drafted from the framework that was developed by AMA with input from other municipalities and reviewed and amended through the legal with our lawyer. Just a couple of things as you're reading through the bylaw. The act, many times our bylaws refers to an act as the Municipal Government Act. In this instance, it means the Municipal Elections Act. Advanced polling means the Tuesday immediately preceding the ordinary polling day, and either one of the fixed by council by resolution. That is either Thursday, the 9th day before the ordinary polling day, or Saturday, the 7th day before ordinary polling day. Alternative polling days means any hours and dates fixed by resolution of town council for alternate voting. And so just as we mentioned, our system will follow very much the format of the paper ballot system. So we will go through the formal ordinary polling days and the advanced polling day, but we'll also have the ability, as we saw last year with electronic voting, electronic telephone voting, of voting anytime after the advanced poll, right up and including on polling day, at the close of polling day. Electronic ballot box, if you're reading another kind of confusing thing, but it means a computer database. So the bylaw refers to ballot box, but it means a computer database in the system where cast internet ballots and telephone ballots are put. Internet ballot means an image of a ballot on a computer screen, including all choices available to an elector and the spaces in which an elector marks a vote. Telephone ballot means an audio set of instructions which describes the voting choices available to an elector, the making of selection by an elector by depressing the number on a touch tone keypad. Just a couple of parts of those, the many pairs of that. Polling stations for alternative voting. Again, it just goes back to we're mirroring the paper ballot system. If council decides that voting by telephone or personal computer device are the only means of voting in an election, the returning officer shall establish at least one polling station for alternative voting, and each polling station established shall be equipped with at least one device that's capable of casting an internet ballot. Polling stations for alternative voting shall be available for electors who are voting with friend voters, which is defined, and for other electors. Open on advanced polling days and ordinary polling days, and on such days and times as decided by the returning officer. So again, polling stations will be similar. It wouldn't be one device. There'll be several devices. Both advanced poll and the ordinary polling day will be set up very much like we do with paper ballots. With the addition, there'll be a polling station set up in the returning officer's office so that someone can come in and vote any time during or after the advanced poll up until the time of the end of ordinary polling. Secrecy, an election officer and system election shall maintain and aid in maintaining the secrecy of voting. Every person in attendance at a polling station or at the counting of votes shall maintain and aid in the maintaining of secrecy of voting. Other methods of voting, if voting via internet through the unsupervised use of a personal computing device is permitted during an election, voting shall be permitted by some other means on each of the advanced poll days and on ordinary poll days via telephone, in person, at a designated kiosk location within the town on advanced polling days, ordinary polling days, and it's also, as I mentioned, anytime during the voting period. And that's a brief summary of the alternative voting bylaw, which is presented for consideration of second reading.
Okay, thank you so much, Terry. Would open up the floor for any questions at this time. Hearing no questions from council, I'll make my first call for opposing presentations. A second call for opposing presentations. And a third and final call for opposing presentations. Hearing none, I'll make my first call for presentations in favor. And a second call for presentations in favor. And a third and final call for presentations in favor. Hearing none, I will ask our CAO if we've had any written submissions.
There were no written submissions received.
Okay, and that concludes that section. And I believe a motion of adjournment. Is there anything else, Terry, that I'm missing? Okay, I would ask council for a motion of adjournment.
Moved.
Okay, do we have a seconder?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded. Public hearing is adjourned. Thanks so much, everyone.